don't need any minimum amount of CTSI to participate in the proof-of-stake system of Cartesi. But of course, because it's a POS system, the more you leave in the staking account, the higher is the chance that you're going to be rewarded. So in the next weeks, we're going to release an article explaining the uniqueness of our staking system. It's going to be interesting because Cartesi is designing this staking system in which the players don't need to make any assumption about their opportunity cost. So stay tuned. Thanks for asking this question. The SDK documentation is very important for us because we are only going to be able to fulfill the vision of onboarding mainstream developers, making the app development easy, to the point that we're able to deliver good documentation, good tutorials, and so on and so forth. So the first version of our SDK documentation is going to be all about Cartesi core, basically what we specified on our tech paper. The first version of our SDK is going to be called the Cart SDK, and that's going to be covered along the SDK documentation and the development portal. So this is a tremendous milestone for us because from that point on, we are really opening the doors for developers to get their way into using Cartesi stack and developing creative stuff that right now we cannot even imagine. So I'm very excited about this milestone, and this is not the end. This is really only the beginning. This documentation, just like the tech, is something that's going to be constantly evolving, like a living organism. And of course, the feedback that we're going to receive from the community is going to be highly important for us to tune, adjust, improve. So we really welcome everybody to participate in this process to make Cartesi really easy for people to use and to make the apps. Cartesi is a startup, and not only that, it's a crypto startup. So it's full of risks, just like any other endeavor like this. Especially in the crypto space that's so recent and so unstable in many regards. But I'd like to tell a little bit of our story. In 2018, around January, we incorporated Cartesi in Singapore. And that was about the time the crypto winter was getting really hard. And during almost 1.5 years, we were struggling to survive. We had this very visionary idea, a great team of researchers and engineers, although we were just a few founders, the founding team basically. And we were really having to pay from our pockets to work. It took us a long time to be able to even pay to get some revenue from the company. And many days I would wake up feeling that the company could be over at any moment. I was feeling hopeless a few times during that journey because it was really hard to fundraise, especially from traditional VCs, from investors that were outside of the blockchain space. And the technology was still immature. We had a good vision around where we wanted to get, but there was a lot of development to be done, and we were really scarce in resources. So that was a great test of resistance for us. Of course, there are many threats ahead of us, but we have entered a new stage in our company. The technology is out there. We are expanding the team. We know much better what we need to build. The project is more mature. And we know better and better the space we are occupying in the ecosystem. The biggest concern that I have is about creating the network effect that every blockchain needs to create. You need to have a minimum of traction, a minimum of adoption, so your project can be considered a success. And I think all the blockchain projects, they go through the same. Now, on the other hand, remember that the vision of Cartesi is to make the adoption of blockchain tech much easier, even for mainstream traditional developers that don't know anything about blockchain. And it's also about making DApps efficient and with a much better user experience for their users. So in that sense, it's not as if we need to spend extra energy to invest in this network effect. Of course, we have to spend a lot of energy, but our vision from the beginning was to make technology that would tackle the blockchain adoption problem. So, technically speaking, I think we are very safe. We are doing something without which I think the future of the apps is not really great. Now, in parallel, we are also working in all the fronts that are necessary, like business development, partnerships building, and marketing. We have recently deployed our ambassadorial program, in which we are selecting carefully representatives of Cartesi around the world in different regions to educate and bring the word to all the places of the globe that we can. And we are using all the mechanisms and techniques that we can to make our network grow and make the adoption of Cartesi be a reality. So there are risks, just like any other startup. Early this week, Cartesi went to WazirX, so it's listed there now. WazirX is the biggest cryptocurrency exchange in India. And it also went through Binance's Launchpad program earlier this year. We're really glad to have CTSI being traded in India. And of course, the job doesn't stop here. We keep talking and engaging with different exchanges around the world to have CTSI listed on. The Korean market is very important for us. And right now we are talking to different exchanges in Korea. On embedded developments, there are two systems involved, a host and a target. In our case, we make a Docker image available to be run under the host system, in which the DApp developer is going to find their components, the software components they want to use in their DApps, in their program. And from there, they also cross-compile their main application. All of these components, they are deployed into the target system that's going to run in the Cartesi emulator, which is a Cartesi machine. And the system that runs in the Cartesi machine is a customized build root. But we are also planning to support other Linux distros at some point. If you're the app developer today and you want to create your DApp or smart contracts on a blockchain supporting smart contracts like Ethereum or Cardano or EOS, you're going to have to rely on very limited runtime environments. You're going to have one or other language to use, but you're going to lack tools, libraries, and lots of resources that you have in the world outside of blockchain. So there is really a huge gap between the infrastructure for blockchain application development versus the infrastructure for mainstream applications that, for instance, you see on the web, for mobile, for desktop, and so on and so forth. So when you talk about bridge, we're talking about bridging this gap at this building blocks infrastructure level. So the Cartesi SDK will allow people to develop DApps that will compile for Linux and run on Linux while behaving just as if they were smart contracts in the end. So we're not talking specifically about a hosting service or anything like this, although that's something else we are also somehow working on. But what we mean by bridge is that we deploy this SDK and we're going to have this network of nodes that are going to be running the apps that are implemented with mainstream software stacks that are supported by Linux. That's how we bridge the two worlds. We have recently established partnership with Medic Network. And there is also another major blockchain project we are partnering with. We just cannot disclose at the time. Of course, it's essential for us, for our business, to talk to different parties, to different potential partners, and we keep doing that on a daily basis. And not only within the crypto and blockchain sphere, more important for us is to establish a relationship with traditional industries, to mainstream software companies, and interact and dialogue with the world outside of blockchain and crypto. It's very important for the success of Cartesi that to really fulfill the vision that we become this gateway, this entry point for mainstream software developers and development companies to onboard blockchain technology. So make no mistake, we are constantly engaging with a number of companies and prospects. There are basically two ways to do blockchain games. One is usually called the mixed approach or NFT approach, in which you only use the blockchain to get in-game assets to the blockchain, and from there people can collect their NFTs or trade them on secondary markets. But all the game logic and everything stays the same as they were in the traditional gaming industry. Usually these games are running on console or mobile or on central servers that the user or the blockchain have no access whatsoever. Now, the second approach for blockchain games is sometimes called monolithic or just decentralized, fully decentralized approach, in which not only you are looking at the blockchain as a place to store in-game assets, NFTs or even coins of games, but you're also willing to decentralize the game logic, the game program itself. So it's a much more extreme approach in which you all the involved nodes of the network, they have to somehow repeat the computation of the game state and so on. So what's the benefit of this second approach? CryptoKitties is an example somehow of this second approach. The idea is that your game is only decentralized to the extent that the entire thing is decentralized. Otherwise, let's say you have only the crypto assets being able to transit from the blockchain to the game server and vice versa, then there is nothing preventing the game developer or the game company to change the rules of the game radically, or just create many more assets in the game and create some inflation and depreciate the value of your crypto asset. The company may go bankrupt and the game may stop existing, and then your crypto asset, even though it's in the blockchain now, because the game doesn't exist anymore, then it's worth nothing. So there is really a limit to what this NFT or hybrid approach can have. Whereas in the case of a fully decentralized or monolithic approach, in which you have the entire game logic decentralized, you can have provably fair games. These are games whose rules cannot be tampered with. The game developer cannot be bribed by developers or be somehow collaborating under the table with them or anything fishy like this. And also, in the case of this open source decentralized games, if the game developer decides to do something the community doesn't want, then there's always the option of a fork. And for the game developer and for the gamer community, that's great, because now they can just take that game and fork it and take it in another direction. So what I really like about the decentralized approach is that now games are able to become something like the decentralized autonomous organizations, the DAOs, but applied for games. You may have this kind of perpetual independent games, which are virtual worlds that exist by themselves and cannot be shut down. That's a quite interesting idea to contemplate. And especially if you have complex economies that are running these virtual worlds that, potentially existing there for a very long time, no matter how well the original company does. So there are many interesting things that you can do with these fully decentralized games. But the simple fact that your game can be provably fair, that you can verify everything that the game logic is doing by yourself on your own blockchain node, is quite cool. It gives you a lot of safety. So for instance, if you have games in which you have some real economy going on top of it, I'm not only talking about gambling, but sometimes you have games with lots of valuable virtual assets that are in there, right? So as the stakes get higher and higher, gamers would like to have more and more control and traceability and visibility and the ability to audit what these game servers or developers are doing with the logic of the game. As the virtual economies of games gets more and more money and more relevant, I believe that fully decentralized games are going to be more relevant at the same pace. So, recapping, we have these two modalities of blockchain games, the hybrids or NFT, in which you only use the blockchain to extract your virtual assets, and the fully decentralized approach, which is harder but much safer and has all these properties and benefits. This second category is the one in which Cartesi can help, because now we are able to allow game developers to create fully decentralized virtual worlds that run independently, that go beyond the limitations of scalability of blockchains, and they can also develop their games using traditional Linux software stacks and OS features. So the possibilities are immense. So if you look at crypts, for instance, why did you choose crypts? We chose crypts because it's a tower defense game in which you have a large amount, you have huge, massive computation happening that could not be run on-chain. But we do all this computation off-chain while preserving the same degree of decentralization and guarantees, security guarantees, that the underlying blockchain would give to players. And not only that, the game logic was developed using OS resources and any language or stacks that we wanted. So in our case, we are compressing, decompressing files, using file system, which would be impossible on blockchains. You don't even have files on blockchains. Using TypeScript, and we could be using any library we wanted to build our game. So really, I think for the game industry that's willing to go to this new game economy, decentralized, it's really, really powerful what we're building here with Cartesi. Gamers of these platforms, they're gonna benefit. They potentially can have higher stakes in there and feel safer. They can have more visibility on what's going on. This year is going to be a very intense year in terms of technical development. We have many difficult, exciting, and ambitious things to develop ahead of us. Mainly the proof of stake sidechain and the mine and the rollups. By the next year, we're going to be in a much better position with a much more mature tech and with much better documentation. So how I see Cartesi in 1 year, we're going to have lots of developers already building cool games and other kind of applications on top of the tech stack. We're going to have more key partnerships shaping up within and without crypto. We're going to have tutorials and much more engagement with the overall tech and software industry. And we'll start to collect the fruits of this vision that we are actually becoming the bridge from mainstream software development world to the blockchain and crypto world. We are certainly going through tough times. This is a really intense new situation for us, for the entire world. And we have close friends and family members who are working on healthcare that have a first-hand experience of what's happening, what's going on with people that are really suffering. And somehow for Cartesi, we are not directly impacted by the crisis so far. We also have from the beginning this culture of remote work. We are a distributed team. So in that way, we have not been impacted in our processes and our modalities of work. And these are very prosperous and interesting times for Cartesi, despite all these crises that we're living with the pandemic. Regarding the new developments, we are so excited. There's so much to do, and we are expanding the team. We have an all-star team of developers, researchers who are really on fire to build this thing. We have just kind of finished the basics of the Cartesi core. We have our first DApp out there, Crypts, and there are so many incredible things with the sidechain, with the rollups, with the proof of stake, the mining, and other things that they're preparing for the community. So yeah, exciting times in that sense.